Hey, it's Liz from No Trace. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these super simple and super cute pattern weights. These sew up super duper fast, and they're also a really great way to put some of your super tiny scraps of fabric to good use. So like your little bits of thread and teeny tiny strips of fabric. So let's go. We're going to be using scraps of fabric that measure 4 by 8 to make our pattern weights. Obviously you could piece together smaller scraps to get 4 by 8. And then we're also going to be using some really small scraps of fabric and thread to serve as the stuffing. The first step is to fold your scrap of fabric together, fold it in half lengthwise. So now it's 4 by 4, and we're going to sew up 2 of the sides, leaving one side open. And I'm going to sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure to back stitch at the start and stop. Now that I have my first 2 seams finished, I'm gonna open up the pattern weight, and now I'm gonna be sewing it together this direction, okay, so that we get this sort of depth down in the bottom, but we're only gonna sew the top halfway, okay, so I'm gonna sew this halfway closed at the machine. Again, I'm gonna use a 1/4 inch seam allowance right here, and just go, I'm going to do a back stitch and just go about halfway down this opening. All right, so this is sewn. Now we are going to trim loose threads, and we're going to trim the corners on the bottom. Next, we want to turn our little pattern weight pouch right side out, and you might need a chopstick to get into those corners. So it looks like a little 3D triangle. There's no name for that. I don't know what the name for that is. And now we're ready to fill our pattern weight with our fabric scraps. I'm working with some thread and fabric bits that come off my serger and other projects. And so I'm gonna actually cut these so that they aren't as long, and that way they can lay a little more evenly inside the pattern weight. So just prep your scraps however you need to. You could also just use stuffing, although it wouldn't be as heavy as these scraps. So these bits of thread and fabric are a lot denser than batting or the polyester stuffing. So these actually are going to weigh a bit more for your pattern weight. Next step is to just take your time and get that stuffing, the scraps, inside your pattern weight until it feels really full. Not so full that you can't sew the opening, but full enough that it's going to be pushed out on all of the seams and corners. Once it's stuffed as much as you can stuff it, we're ready to close up the gap. If you wanted to, you could take this to your sewing machine and just sew it closed at the machine, but I'm going to show you how to sew it closed with a needle and thread, doing a simple ladder stitch or an invisible stitch. So the first step is to get the needle and grab a little pinch at the fold at one of the ends of this pattern weight opening. It doesn't really matter where you start. Then we're going to sew straight across the opening towards the other fold. Grab about a 1/4 inch of fabric and pull the needle through, and you'll see that that starts to tighten up and close up the opening. Then again, we take our needle and we go directly across from where the thread came out, grab about a 1/4 inch of fabric, push the needle through, and tighten. So just continue that until you've sewn all the way down the opening in your pattern weight. Once you've sewn up the gap and you're at the end of the opening, what you want to do is make one more stitch. And as you do that, go ahead and get your needle into the loop of thread so that you can create a little knot. You could do a couple of knots here or just one is probably enough. I'm going to do one more knot in this loop and then just gently tighten everything up. Get that knot down low. And then in order to hide this thread, I'm going to actually put the needle into the pattern weight and I'm going to push it out the other side and pull the thread and the knot down. Then we'll just trim the thread like magic. There's your little weight.
Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope it helps you put your teeny tiny scraps of fabric to good use. We have a Facebook group that's all about zero waste sewing and crafting and eco-friendly projects like this one. Their link is in the description box below this video, so check it out. I'd love to see you over there. And give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the No Truth channel if you've made it this far.